Today we will fresh crack Deanston, the Highland single malt Scotch whiskey, 9-year-old brandy cask finish. This is bottled in, or distilled in 2008 and bottled in 2017, so it's quite dated actually. It's a 2017 bottling, so that's quite a while. I'm not sure why this has become available to me now, but 2017 bottling. Um, this distillery is from the Deanston distillery, as I'm sure you can tell, but it is owned by Heineken, so ultimately it goes into Heineken's pocket. If I cut this and upload this to YouTube, if you're on YouTube, we opened this live on stream on Twitch TV, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, if you so care to come join us weekdays. This is 56.4% alcohol by volume, or 11.2, so 112.8 proof. It is non-chill filtered, and it is natural color. And it is distilled, again, like we said, in 2008 and bottled in 2017. It spent 8 years in ex-bourbon, and usually, I don't think it says here, but typically Deanston uses exclusively first fill, I think. So I'm assuming it's first fill ex-bourbon, but I don't know for 100% sure. And then it spent 2 years finished in ex-French brandy, of origin we don't really know. That's all I got. That's all the deets. Of course, this is pretty good. This is pretty good coloration. Of course, we do have 2 years of brandy, which it doesn't say what kind of brandy. We kind of assume it's grapes, but it could be like apple brandy or peach brandy or any kind of brandy. But French brandy, we kind of assume it's going to be like cognac kind of source, but it doesn't say cognac cask. It is brandy cask, so it is not necessarily the same, but again, French oak at the end of the day. And of course, this is one of these old school kind of distilleries. It was originally a cotton mill in 1785 that was later converted into a distillery. And the distillery runs self-sufficient on an on-site hydroelectric facility. So they provide all their own power. It kind of has like a water mill kind of thing on it right here, but I don't know if that's... I mean, it probably is not an old-timey water mill, but I mean, maybe. And they don't use any kind of... It's all old school. There's no, like, computerized anything. It's all manual stuff going on at Deanston. Kind of a cool bottle topper there. It kind of says, like... I don't know if I can get that to focus. It says like Deanston Mill and stuff like that. It's hard to see on the camera, but all right. Good popper. I've been looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be real tasty, actually. We're going to give that a good couple minutes for the initial ethanols. Again, this is at cask strength, 56.4% alcohol by volume. So we're going to give it some time to sort of initially acclimate. I guess the popular term to use these days is breathe. We're going to give it some time to breathe. You know, it's been in that bottle for a while. Came for funny IKEA rocket games, stayed for funny words from the Magic Man. The Magic Man with magic hands. Alright, so we'll let that chill for a minute, because at this point, it is just all ethanol coming off of that. And of course, we can always take a minute and consult our whiskey opus and see if it will tell us anything interesting about the Deanston distillery here. Do you like that? Spin me right round, baby, right round like a... Anyway. Bad cover. Speyside. I'm looking for Highlands. We're in the Highlands here. This is a Highland. Highland with the letter D. That should be soon, right? Unless it's under Heineken. Dalmore. Shouldn't it be before Dal? No, it's DE. DE. Glendronach. Dalwhinnie. Yeah, see, this is this thing where it goes from DA to Glendronach for some reason. I don't really understand the ordering, and then we're into all the Glens. Like, this is a Highland, right? Surely Deanston's in here somewhere. Sometimes I don't understand the ordering. It feels like it should be alphabetical, and it's like kind of not. Like, it'll like put Diageo's stuff all together because Diageo starts with a D or something like that. Deanston is on page 93. See, like, it's here after Brora for some reason. It's kind of odd. Anyway, yeah, this is... Ooh, this is on the Deanston distillery. This guy here, that is that building there. That's the one that is on the bottle, that big building that used to be a cotton mill. On display here, there's the Virgin Oak in top there, which is a pretty cheap offering, no age statement. And in the bottom right, there's that 15-year-old organic organic whiskey, which is entirely made with organic barley, as far as I know. Now this says it's owned by CVH Spirits. Is that Heineken? What is CVH Spirits? Or is this a new thing that, you know, bought them and things are changing here? Because I have it written that they're owned by Heineken. So I don't know what CVH Spirits is. Maybe things have changed. Just so that you guys can see what I'm looking at and how annoyed I am. I came over here to find out about CVH Spirits. Was the book published? Pretty recently. And it says CVH Spirits. And then when I clicked, I want to learn more about their brands, it goes, looks like a page is broken. So this says Deanston, Bunnahabhain, Tobermory. So these are brands that are linked, and we know this because Tobermory is a distillery that does not have a warehouse. But my understanding was that a lot of Tobermory stock went to the big Heineken warehouses and used to be aged at Deanston, but they don't really have room for that shit anymore. But this would seem to imply that this CVH Spirits, but who owns CVH Spirits though? Our business. See, now I want to go to Deanston Wikipedia and see. See, this says, so this is what I understood is this was owned by Distell, which is a subsidiary of Heineken. But maybe that's different now. What does this book say? What's the published date here out of curiosity? So we want to get our facts straight here. Doesn't fucking say, of course. It says it was printed in Italy. I got that much. Penguin Random House. This American edition 2024. So, I mean, it should be up to date, right? You would think. So what's going on here? What's going on with Distill? Did they sell? What's going on? This says it's on Wikipedia. It still says Deanston's part of their portfolio. It's very interesting. Hold up. Oh, there's all kinds of weird things going on. Ho, ho, ho. Okay. So, okay. So this says... So the wiki is probably not up to date. So this says on... there's some interesting things going on here. Okay. I'm kind of glad we ended up in this rabbit hole because it's going to correct some of my notes. But this says on June 16th, Whiskey Invest Direct, CVH Spirits, a new force in Scotch. April 27th, the company formerly known as Distill became CVH Spirits. But the thing is like, I thought this was just owned by Heineken. So Distill turned into CVH Spirits. This happened because Dutch brewing giant Heineken finally completed its long drawn out $2.6 billion takeover of bulk Distill Group that day. So, did this come out from the bottom of Distill? I don't understand what happened here. Okay, so what I'm reading here is Distill owned these distilleries. Heineken went to acquire the bulk of Distill's portfolio, which is all of this shit. Okay. But the Scotch whiskey business, earlier known as Burn Stewart Distillers, was spun out under ownership of Cape Vine Capital Holdings, which is 59% owned by the diverse South Africans, blah, blah, blah. So these three distilleries, which were owned by Distill, were actually not part of the acquisition, apparently, in some way, and spun out onto this other company called CVH Spirits. So these are not Heineken. And this is not quite correct. This is actually a different company now. Okay, so we can correct this. But I also found something else funny going on at the same time. There's something more. There's something more. And I don't know. Maybe this is dry for you guys, but there's something more here. Here we have September of this year, Campari buys stake in Bunnahabhain. So 14.6% stake in the owner of Bunnahabhain, Deanston, and Tobermory, which again is this Cape Vine Holdings, which is a holding company for CVH Spirits. So so when Heineken took over Distell, the Scotch brands were separated from the portfolio and kept under this holding company. And this holding company is now 15% owned by Campari. So it's sort of independent, sort of Campari a little bit. So big Italian liquor group is getting their hands into the little independent business that seems to have popular Scotch. That's the other part of this equation. All that being said, this is not a Heineken product, apparently. Apparently, Heineken wanted every other part of Distell but the Scotch. Apparently, that's what happened. So that's interesting. We learned today we adjusted our notes. Should I put 15% Campari? Maybe we'll wait for a full rundown of that. Anyway, this has been sitting for a minute. So we'll see what's going on with that. And again, this is natural color for 8 years ex-bourbon, 2 years French brandy cask of some kind. That's a little interesting. Ooh, there's some things to unpack there. You get that core Deanston distillate profile. It's in there. My first initial kind of like impression of it is just immediately like, yeah, this is a Deanston distillate. You can really tell. And it's not terribly old, right? So talking 9 years plus 2 or 1 and change kind of finish. So it's not that old. And immediately it comes across very much like, yeah, this is a Deanston whiskey. You get that core identity. That being said, there's a couple kind of interesting characteristics that are jumping out at me. And again, it's very tightly woven at this point. But you do get like some of that kind of wine, grapey sort of character, which you kind of attribute to this kind of like brandy cask. But you also get like cocoa spice, kind of like more a little bit of that like kind of a lighter fruit note too. There's definitely a wininess, like a honey sweetness, a cocoa powder, a little bit grassy. It's quite interesting, actually. So it's like it's got a little bit of apple in there, a little bit of that winey character, a little grassy, a little cocoa powder. There's some other kind of note in there too. That's kind of reminding me a little bit. Kind of comes across a little waxy. But also like a similar, almost like a sulfuriness too. I don't know if that's coming across the way that I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but there's another kind of note in there, which is giving me like Craig Gellicky vibes. Yeah, I would call the grape note like grape must, a little bit of that malt is showing in the mix there. These are very like all very tightly woven notes, very stuck together, very compacted. Something something neck pour probably. But really so far, like, despite the fact that we're having a bit of a struggle to like unpack these very tightly woven characters, lots going on there. I'm quite pleased with the nose initially. A lot of distinct characters, a lot of uniqueness, but um, still like keeping intact somewhat some of that Deanston identity. Black pepper. Black pepper is always a note that I'm surprised that I get. Like sometimes it's like it just comes out at you just for like a second. It's like, "Hey, black pepper," and you're like, "Oh, I didn't really think you would be there." But it's like fleeting. That's interesting, man. It's it's not like anything I've had so far on the aroma. It's there's definitely some interesting stuff going on there. Um, so we'll put this to the palate. Again, this is cask strength, but again, we're talking about 56.4, so it's a pretty modest cask strength, a pretty, like, right in the range that I would prefer ABV. It's not terribly hot, but you're getting that full flavor. So much fun. Ooh, oh, that's kind of tasty. There is kind of like a really good mid-palate fruit character that comes out of there. I don't want to jump the gun and say exactly what it is, but my mind immediately went to like whole apple, but very strong, very pronounced um, fruit flavor in the mid palate. Um, More so than like anything the distillate would provide. Um, we'll say that the finish right now is lingering on um, like malts, grassiness, a little bit of spiciness. Um, and a very kind of weird. This is like, I, I, this is a fringe note, but I'm going to give it because like sometimes when you get these fringe notes, they're like kind of like wild, and I think it's accurate, but um, like if you had apple cider that was like left in a glass a very small amount and it like dried into the glass overnight, like the remnant crust of that on the finish. Um, I don't know where that came from, but it made sense to me. Dry, crusty apple cider. I don't know. Awesome, good honey in there. Yeah, honey and cocoa, sprinkle black pepper. Um, you get some of that grape must, but also kind of brighter apple fruit. Uh, Milk chocolate. Like, so the sweetness is kind of like infiltrating that cocoa and giving you like a milk chocolate note. Um, this thing seems kind of wild. Yeah, that's coming across really milk chocolate to me right now. Like the cocoa and like the honey are getting together in this kind of way that kind of comes across as milk chocolate. You still get some of that bright fruity sweetnesses. You still get some of that like maltiness. This is a killer. Um, this is the best nose I've had in a while. The best nose I've had since that Shelter Point one, I think. To be fair, um, I'd probably call it a better nose than is on the Lafroig Cartridge, for example. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. And I don't know like the kind of choices you make to like end up putting this in the bottle like in a weird like 9 years to finish. It's got to be one of those things where they just go, have you tasted this recently? Let's taste it. Man, this is good. Let's just throw it in the bottle. Feels like so weird. Hard to plan. It definitely tastes like Deanston though. It's not like it's not like so wild that like you can't get that core identity in there. Like it reminds me of the other Deanstons that I've had. It's a lot to unpack though. It feels like a lot of the notes are really compacted together. It's like right at first you do get some of that like fruitiness, some of that like honey sweetness. There's also like some malt kind of in the mix there. And then like further down into the tongue, you get some of that like grapey note, some of that winey note. But it's also like kind of spikes on the like other fruit character too, like the apple fruit. Um, a little bit of spiciness on the finish. The one thing I'll say is like the finish doesn't seem terribly long. Um, Medium at best, maybe medium minus. It's a lower end finish. And that would be synonymous with the idea that it's not that old. And if age and length of finish have a correlation, it would make a lot of sense. The finish is pretty fleeting. Some good cinnamon spice on the finish. Does come across a little peppery. You need a little bit of waxiness early in the finish. The barrel is making itself known briefly, but then it's kind of gone. There is some of that like cider fruit remnant kind of taste kind of riding out. Maybe a little bit of like bitter character, which could be, honestly going, it could be barrel related or it could be like a cocoa powder kind of note, but it's kind of like just gone after that first set. It's one of those things where like there's a pretty good complexity of flavors right when you swallow, and you do get a few waves of a couple different interesting flavors, but they're not very lengthy. They don't last too long. Some little flashes in the pan of a couple different things, but the length of finish does suffer. It's not very long in finish. Overall, seems phenomenal. Higher proof, younger age, still pretty drinkable. I don't really have any kind of like heat or dryness from this. The palate feels very tight. It feels very much like you got to pick it apart. That might improve over time. I'm not 100%, like we're spitballing a little bit on the notes on the palate. They're so dense that it's hard to get at all of them. It's kind of like you kind of know there's a breadth of things there, but it's hard to unpack them. And the finish kind of like has some flashes of some good flavor, but doesn't last that long. It's very kind of low length, high quality, but low length of finish. It's still quite tasty though. It's also kind of a little different. I think that core Deanston identity's in here. You get kind of let that little bit of maltiness, that little bit of like honey character that is like so present in the Deanston distillate. The honey note is so loud. A little bit of pepperiness, a little bit of waxiness. At first, you get more of that like grape must kind of character, and then over time, it kind of develops out. And I'm also wondering if the like kind of chocolatey cocoa thing would be attributed to the brandy or not. I'm not getting like a super huge like vanilla character that you might get from like a first fill ex bourbon, but there's plenty of honey, there's plenty of sweetnesses. Every so often you kind of get a pretty loud kind of like orchard fruit character too. Let's go to the judges here. Let's see what they have to say. Let's see what they have to say for themselves on the tin here, which I'm glad we're still getting some tins. It seems like more and more companies are moving to this like just cardboard box shit. Like, I'm glad that this is like an older sherry oak that came in a tin. because like that Carchus, for example, came in paper box. It's not my favorite, and all of the new Lefroigs I think are coming in paper boxes, which are not the greatest. For example, the Lefroig lore, which used to be like a forest green on white text, like an inverse tin, now just comes in like a box that says Cask lore on it. It's not the best, you know. Negative mark in packaging. Anyway, all these Deanstons seem to be right on the money, so. Hints of dried fruit with predominant grape notes. I don't know. I think grape notes are clear, but to me the fruit is orchard fruity as ever. Sweet vanilla and creamy toffee with subtle exotic spices. I don't know what we mean when we say exotic spices exactly, but to me, cocoa powder's in there. You do get some like black pepper in here. And these guys say sweet vanilla and creamy toffee. And I think for me, this creamy toffee is coming out as a honey. And I don't really get like a strong vanilla, but you could just roll that into honey too. Like a lot of these things together, I think, are kind of just in that sweet realm. I like honey, but on the palate they say rich oak with a distinctive dried fruit brandy influence, creamy toffee, deep honeyed vanilla, and sweet malt. Malt's in there. They say toffee and honeyed vanilla, but to me these are kind of just like, to me, all come across as like a honey note. You could kind of express that however you want, but I think we're kind of like talking about the same thing here. And they say dried fruit with brandy influence. Again, to me, like I get like a grape must or like a grape kind of note, like a brandy or cognac kind of winey note. And they call this dried fruit brandy influence. They're heavy on the like dried fruit on this tin. I think to me, I like to reserve like dried fruit as in the like kind of like the sherry dried fruit realm. There's no sherry here, so to me it's like a different thing, but like if I said dried fruit on this and dried fruit on a sherry dram, like for example, Bunnahabhain from the same company, I wouldn't be talking about the same flavor. So I kind of don't like dried fruit here, but you could say like dried apricot or like dried grapes. You wouldn't be like wrong, I don't think. It's a fruit character. Long finish with lingering dried fruit flavors and a subtle spice. The finish here is not long, in my opinion. I think dried fruit flavors and subtle spice is fair. I guess that dried cider thing is like a dried apple note, I guess. Definitely some spiciness in there, some pepper, a little bit of cocoa. To me, the barrel has some presence in the finish. But they're right long finish, and to me, the finish is kind of more like medium minus, kind of on the shorter end. And I think that's just one of those things where, unfortunately, people associate a long finish with a quality whiskey, I think. And I think there's no way they would write medium finish on here. You know what I mean? And since long is completely up to a person's personal interpretation, I think that they just write long every fucking time, man. Long and lingering, you know, they just write that on every tin, I think. What tin does not say long and lingering? Have you had one that said, yeah, it's a short finish. Very clean finish. No one says that. I wonder if they say that on any of these random boxes I have here. This one doesn't even talk about the finish. They don't even try. Like, fuck that. What does this say? Same shit. Doesn't even talk about it. I don't know. To me, the finish is not long. But that is my personal subjective opinion on the length. Delectable spiced fruit and honey notes. I don't hate that. It is spicy. It is fruity. The sweetnesses are front and center. Very detectable. Very tasty. All interesting to note. Okay, so I kind of assumed this was first fill. But when I read this tin, it actually says, begin life in whiskey refill before being transferred to premium brandy. So actually what this is 9 years, not first fill. It's 9 years a refill finished in brandy. So that kind of explains why, at least for me, I don't get a ton of this like bourbon cask influence, even though they talk about, even though they seem to talk about the like vanilla and stuff, because that's kind of like a barrel note. This is actually refill, and it would explain why so much of the like core, what I would consider core Deanston DNA distillate is so on display here. Let's adjust this refill. This is a refill ex-bourbon. Yeah, that would make so much sense to me, because I can just taste Deanston in the dram. You can just tell it's Deanston. It's so iconic in character. All right. So I guess that's it. I guess that's it for today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for being here. Probably try. I think we're gonna keep on trucking with Uncle Pig, what is this even called, this game? Uncle Chop Rocket Chop. We'll continue on with that until we reach like whatever the weird rogue-like conclusion is of that game. I've been enjoying it anyway. In the background, don't worry, okay? Don't worry. In the background, we're still playing. We're still doing some passive training on Brighter Shores. I know you guys are ready to rip right into that again, but